Guys, I want to start off tonight by telling you a story about a true craftsman. Now, not a craftsman like you and I, more of an artist. This guy was great at drawings. So great, in fact, that all the studios in town wanted to hire this guy. And he had work ethic. And so he would burn the midnight oil for these corporate studios. But there was only one problem. You see, no matter how hard he worked, he barely made ends meet. But these corporate studios, well, they were raking it in on his back. And he had enough of that crap. And he decided that he would beg, borrow, and save his way to a better life. He decided that he would buy his own studio and he would create his own drawings for himself that he was proud of, and he would release those to the public. And finally, he released his first drawing. And it was more like an animation. And he called it Mickey Mouse. And this was Walt Disney. And I think you guys know the rest of the story. Now, I'm not talking about all the stuff that's happened over the last couple of years, not trying to get into politics here. Now, guys, I'm really appreciative that you showed up tonight. And I don't care if there's 300, or 3,000 of you out there watching. I'm going to give you everything I have tonight. And by the end of this webinar, I hope that you know how to use the skills that you already have to not only make more money today, but also build yourself a retirement. Build wealth with the skills that you already have. And we're going to do that through a product that you already know well, and that's real estate. I'm talking about cutting out your customers and you becoming your only customer. I'm talking about not only being the contractor, but also being the investor on your projects. I'm talking about how to get great deals and how to get the money to fund them. Guys, I'm talking about how you own the studio. Now, I want to make sure comments are working here. So if you guys are out there, hit me with a couple comments on where you're from. Now, I want to tell you about a job that we just got hired for. And this investor bought this property for $136,000. And he hired us to come in and do the project. And it was a really easy project. No mechanical, electrical, plumbing, no roofing, no major structural. It was kitchen, bath, floors, paint. It was a $30,000 project. We charge a 20% markup, so we charged him $36,000. I made a profit of $6,000. I was happy about that on an easy job until I saw that this investor went and listed and sold that property for $350,000. Now, I know that he's got other costs like real estate commissions, closing costs, lender fees, insurance, property taxes, but let's be conservative and say all that cost him $50,000. Well, instead of the $350,000, let's say he cleared $300,000. He bought the property for $136,000. He paid us $36,000. That means that this investor cleared $128,000. Well, I cleared $6,000. But I'm the one that did all the work. You see, here is a pie chart of all the profits made on that project. You see the little gray down there at the bottom? That's me. And the lender, realtor, other fees made a little bit as well. But this investor made 50% of all the profits on that project. But here's the secret, guys. I was that investor. Now, how did I do that? Well, it's because I understand the 4 controls of real estate. There are only 4 things that you can really control on any deal. And that's number 1, the deal itself. That's the price at which you acquire the property and how you get the money to buy it. And 2 is the strategy. Now, what I'm really talking about here are scopes of work and writing a scope of work that makes sense for real estate investors, for house flippers, not the scopes of work you write for these Karen homeowners. And 3, the work itself. I think you guys already know that part. And number 4, the market. This is taking that property to the open market and getting the max amount of money you can. And we're going to show you how to hire the right type of real estate agent. And it's not your cousin Becky. And we also have some strategies for listing it to get the most possible. Now, I don't want to underemphasize this. There's going to be work involved. But you guys aren't here at 8:30 on a Wednesday night because you're not willing to put in the work. And also, I hear you, that there's going to be risk. And some of you are concerned about that. And the thing is, I've heard all of the stories. I've heard the what ifs. I've heard, what if the market crashes? What if the lender pulls the funding from me? What if I thought I had a deal, but it wasn't really a deal? What if I can't find a deal altogether? And I definitely hear that. But I like to look at it the opposite way. I like to ask myself, what if I spend the best hours of the best years of my life doing work that I'm not proud of? What if I do that work for people that I don't respect? What if my kids see me do that? And what if my kids lead that same life? And guys, what if I don't realize that until I'm on my deathbed? And that is a risk that I'm not willing to take. And to look at it alternatively, this is a quote from one of my favorites, Mark Twain. I've had a lot of worries in my life, most of which have never happened. And guys, if anybody's made mistakes in this game, it's me. Check this one out. Early on in my career, I bought this property and I thought that I was going to get it done in 6 months. I got a 6-month loan on this thing. A little bit bigger so you can see it. So this loan expires in 6 months. And if I finish this project in the summer of 2014, as this sign mentions, I would have barely hit the 6-month mark. Well, here's that Zillow listing. You can see here that it sold in November of 2015. Now, did that lender come and take my house? Did the lender put me in bankruptcy? Did he come and break my kneecaps with a baseball bat? No, because lenders don't want to own your house. They don't want to take the house. If they took the house, they would have to hire people like you to come finish it. And so as long as you haven't ghosted them, they're happy to let you keep working. And that's just one of the possible what if scenarios. But we're going to go through all of them tonight. Now, there are 5 things that make real estate the best asset that there is. And the very first one, the most powerful of all, the reason that Andrew Carnegie himself said that 90% of millionaires out there are made through real estate. Well, that number one reason is called leverage. And what does leverage mean? Leverage means that with a small amount of force and a lever and a fulcrum, I can lift a big heavy object. And what does that mean for us? It means that, and by the way, this is me here on the left of this drawing. That means that little old me over there with a $10,000 investment and a fulcrum, the pyramid in the middle is a bank or a lender, I can lift up a whole house. Let's look at that $10,000 on any other type of investment. Let's say that you wanted to buy a stock with $10,000. You buy this stock. How much of a stock can you buy for $10,000? You can buy $10,000 worth of stock. And let's say this stock performs well, and in 20 years it doubles in value. Now that stock is worth $20,000. And over that 20-year period, I've made $10,000 with my $10,000. Great, right? Well, let's look at real estate. Now, with that same $10,000, and because of leverage, because banks and other lenders are willing to give me the money to buy the rest of the property, I can buy a $300,000 house with that same $10,000. And let's say that over 20 years, that doubles in value. Now it's worth $600,000. Now my $10,000, instead of just making me $10,000, has made me $300,000, but it's better because these loans actually get paid off over time. You pay your mortgage and the loan goes to zero. So actually my $10,000 could have made me $600,000. Now, tonight we're talking about flipping houses, not holding them for rentals. But I just want you to know the true power of real estate through leverage. But the thing is, when I first started out, like a lot of you, you think that, well, you know, these rich guys are the ones that can get money. And I thought that too. But the thing is, I was making one huge mistake. is that I thought the way to get money was the bank. But here's the reality, guys. Banks suck at lending for guys like us. There's a few reasons why these banks suck. The first one is that they have a series of tests. You see, the bank wants to know that you're credit worthy. That means your credit score, your credit history. And this stuff doesn't just build overnight, but I'll tell you, it crashes overnight. And I was certainly in the situation where I didn't have a great credit, especially when I was first starting out. And it took years to build that up. And then number two, income. They want to see a monthly cash flow from you. And if you had a high paying job, maybe that works for you. But for us contractors, we don't have that. And what we also don't have is consistent money. It's not like we can just go do a couple of jobs, get a couple of paychecks and say, all right, bank, I have the money now. No, they want to see 2 to 3 years of consistent earned income. Yeah, that's going to be a problem. And 3, cash reserves. They want to see money in the bank. Well, if that wasn't bad enough, there's another big problem with the banks. And this is a concept that I really need you guys to pay attention to because we're going to revisit it throughout the night. I call it the scale of livability. So bear with me here. In every neighborhood, there are sales that get made. And generally these sales get clustered up at different values. So you see on the right-hand side of this bar graph, around the $330,000 mark, there's a bunch of sales being made. And also in the middle of the bar chart at around $200,000, a lot of sales are made. And then all the way to the left at like $100,000, a lot of sales are getting made. And these little clusters, and I've just pointed them out here, I've actually given them names. So to the right, we call that the range of comps. And you may have heard of the ARV or after repair value or comps in a neighborhood. And that's what we're talking about. We're talking about the houses that have been renovated. You might hear a train here. And see, the thing is, I buy these houses off market. And I found a house that I thought my wife would really love that we could move into. And I bought this house. But, you know, when you're doing these off market deals, you kind of like walk through, make an offer. And we're going to get to all that later. But anyway, thought it was a great house, got a great deal on it. And bought it. And then me and my wife came here to move our stuff. And like within 5 minutes, I noticed that there's a train track right behind the house. And then like 5 minutes later, another train. And like 10 minutes later, another train. Turns out that there are a lot of trains that go by here. So this is probably not the only time this will happen tonight. So just bear with me. It's quick. Now, back to the range of comps. You understand the range of comps. These are the houses. This is ultimately what you're trying to get your house to look like, the houses that have been renovated in the neighborhood. And then in the middle is what we call barely bankable. These are houses that are outdated. They need some work, but they're livable. Somebody is living there now or could live there today. And then to the far left, there's the bombed out houses. These are the houses that are possibly going to need the drywall taken off. They're going to need total renovations, start to finish. And there's varying degrees of bombed out. Now the goal for us is always to be moving things to the right-hand side. Now, you see, look at this scale here compared to what we were just looking at. It's the same thing. I just broke it down into a scale to make it easier for us to look at throughout this webinar. Now, there's one addition to the scale here, and that's what we call the line of livable. And now we're getting back to the banks here. The line of livable, a bank will not give you money if your house is to the left of the line of livable. It has to be a livable house today because it's safer for them to lend on. That poses an issue for us, a pretty large issue, because what you really want to do is take the house from bombed out all the way to the range of comps. Or sometimes you will find barely bankable houses and move them into the range of comps, but those deals are a lot harder to find. And really, the real value for us as contractors is that we're not scared of those big projects. And so it opens us up to a lot of deals that would be closed off to others. Now, if that's not enough, there is a third reason that banks suck at lending for us. And we're going to do some math here. It's going to be some simple math. Let's just say that this subject property has an ARV of $350,000 in the range of comps. The center of the range of comps is $350,000 for this house. That's what we think it'll sell for when we've renovated it. We acquire that property for $200,000. We do a $40,000 renovation on it. We have $20,000 of other costs, which all in all, the costs equal $260,000. Now, a bank will give you 80% of the acquisition cost of that property. So you take this $200,000, they'll give you 80% of that. That's $160,000. Do you see a problem? We need $260,000 to make this deal work. They're going to give us $160,000. That means that we're going to be coming out of pocket $100,000. Yeah, right. Not going to happen, or at least consistently. Sure, maybe you can save up for a couple of years and finally get the $100K in your pocket to be able to do this once. But that's not what we're here for, guys. We're here to make a living out of this, to do this consistently. So the bank's not going to work. So there's got to be another option, right? Well, there is. Here's the thing. Banks actually have two sides to the house. We were talking about the conventional side. These are like, you may have heard Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac. These are government-backed loans that they give to both investors and homeowners who are going to reside in the house. That's not what we want. The other side are commercial loans. Now, these are more like given by the bank, and there's some different rules to these that are more appealing. Now, they still do have the tests, but they have a different set of math for us. So we have an ARV of $350,000. We acquire that property for $200,000, $40,000 renovation, $20,000 other cost, total cost of $260,000. But you see, these commercial loans, well, they'll actually give you a loan based upon all of the costs. So instead of just the acquisition, they're going to give you 80% of all of the costs, $202,000. Now, some give a little bit more than 80%, some less, different rules for different people. This is somewhere in the middle. We still have a problem, guys. That means that we'll be bringing $52,000 to be able to finish that property and put it back on the market. That's better. But could we do that consistently? I don't think so. And I don't really want to be saving up $52,000 for every property that I want to buy. So there must be another option. Well, guys, there is another option. And it's called hard money lending. I know, sounds tough. But the reality is, hard money just means that there is a tangible, hard asset that is collateralizing the loan. That means that they could take your house if you don't pay the loan, as opposed to bank loans are generally called soft loans. So the name seems a lot tougher than it actually is. Now, a hard money lender, which you can find these guys online. You're just going to type in hard money. These guys are built for us. They are built for houses that need improvement, that aren't livable today. They expect to both pay for acquisition and for the renovation and even other costs. But there's more to it than that. Let's look at the math of a hard money loan. We have ARV of $350,000, acquisition cost of $200,000, $40,000 in renovation, $20,000 in other costs, $260,000 total. But here's the kicker, guys. A hard money loan, a hard money lender, does not look at the cost. They don't care about the cost. What they care about is the value of the property after it's done. They care about the ARV. They're going to give you a loan based upon what the property will be worth after you do the work that you say you're going to do. Now, this varies. Some give 60, 65%. I've seen all the way up to 80%. So let's take something right in the middle, 75%. They'll give you 75% of the $350,000. That's $262,500. Remember, we only need $260,000. Does that mean that you get a free house? Not quite, guys. See, there are no free lunches. The interest rates for these hard money loans are quite a bit higher. And there's also origination points. There's also a loan term. It's not as long as a bank loan might be. Interest rates are higher, origination points. Usually I'd pay like 12% interest. I've seen some for like 10 or even a little bit less. Usually 2 points up front. That means 2% of the total amount you're borrowing right up front, maybe 3. I've seen 4. So there's going to be higher costs. So on that deal specifically, I would expect to pay more other costs. Therefore, I'd have to bring some money to the table. But you can easily solve that problem by just getting a better acquisition price, which we're going to talk all about that. I also mentioned that there are loan terms, and I hit on that earlier as well. But when I finally was introduced to hard money, this is when I was really able to go full-time as a house flipper. And you recall this project that was still coming in the summer of 2014. And, well, that was really where I got my start as a flipper. And, the money was tight at the time. I would actually live in the back of my truck in this little camper that I bought for like $500. It didn't have a bathroom. And actually, at one point in the project, I kind of lost some money. I had to sell my truck and sleep in just the camper in the backyard. That's me getting ready to go out in the rain, do some work. Had a trash bag instead of a raincoat. That's all my laundry in the backyard of that house because I literally slept in the backyard. I was young and single, so I could get away with those types of things. But I finally finished that project. And at that time, I really worried about the details. And I built this thing. I know it's a little bit blurry, but it was the kitchen. Did the concrete countertops and polished them. Did an indoor 2-story waterfall. Now, we don't do work like that anymore. We'll talk about that in just a second. But because of that work, I really started to be looked at as a contractor, which you guys already have that going for you. But that's when I realized that there was another type of lender. And they really wanted to work with guys who knew what they were doing. Because if you know what you're doing, if you know how to do the work, it takes all the risk out of it for them. And so you get access to the best types of lenders. And I call these guys private hard money lenders. You see, hard money lenders, they're corporations and they work just fine. But you don't talk to the guy that gives you the loan. It's a guy that brokers the loans. And, there is private money that you might hear people talk about, which is basically like borrowing money from loved ones, friends, family. And I've never really liked that because I feel like it's almost like they're civilians to the game and they don't actually understand what they're risking. They're just doing it because they trust you. And I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. I don't want to risk their money. So these private hard money lenders have always been the happy medium for me. And what these are basically hard money lenders, but usually these people were real estate investors or are real estate investors. They were flippers and they've, for lack of better words, graduated. They've made money and now they want to make money off of that money by lending it to people like you and me. So usually it's their money, their family's money, or maybe they raise some money. But the great thing is these guys are also mentors for you because they've been through it. And they have similar rates to the corporate hard money lenders, and you have direct access to them. And that is where the sweet spot has been for me. And the question is, where do you find these guys? There's a few places that you might look. One are real estate investor meetups. Every town that I've ever lived in, and I've lived and flipped in a lot of different places, they all have these real estate investor meetup groups. And if you go to those and let people know what you're doing and the experience that you have as a contractor, those guys are going to come to you. It's not that easy. You're going to have to do some networking. That's one place that you'd find them. Two is Facebook groups. Just like the real estate investor meetups, every town that I've been in also have Facebook groups for investors. You just type in your town real estate investors, your town flippers, your town wholesalers, your town. Not sure what I left out. Contractors. You get the idea. Number 3 is word of mouth. Talk to any investor clients that you have. Talk to anybody that you know that flips houses. They probably already access these people or at least know about them in the community. The flipper community is tighter than you think in most towns. Talk to contractor buddies of yours that have done work for investors. And once again, network. And you've probably heard the cliche that it's not what you know, it's who you know. But it definitely applies here. You definitely have to get yourself out there. You can't live in a cave and make all this happen. You're going to have to get yourself out there. Once you've made it, then you can revert back to your cave. Now, this is a problem that I had when I was first starting out asking these guys for money, is I felt like I almost always owed them something. So if I had a project that I knew would cost $80,000 to renovate, I'd always feel shy about it. And I'd say like, oh, I could probably get it done for 65. And I'd go into it knowing that I was going to at least have $15,000 that I'd have to bring to the table. And you guys know construction never goes the right way. So it was always more than the 80. And these guys, if they've already made the decision that this is not me, but this is a begging person begging for the money. If they've already made the decision that they like and trust you, believe in you enough to lend, well, they're just going to lend you the money that you need. So don't be shy about it. Get the money that you need, which leads me to the next point, that when you get the money from these lenders, whether it's a hard money or a private hard money lender, well, you're two people. You're the contractor and now you're the investor. And if you were just an investor and you had to go pay a contractor to do the work, well, they'd have a markup, right? Of course they would. So you as the contractor should act independently from you as the investor and charge a markup. That way you're making your everyday money, your grocery money, what you were making today, and then you have the added money of what you make as an investor or a house flipper. Now, once I figured that out, I really got rolling. And I started to do some great projects. Nice little kitchen. Check it out. Weird fireplace thing. House sold for a lot of money. And then what I did is I kept doing bigger and bigger and bigger projects because it's kind of just the way I am, swing for the fences, I guess. And I finally did what I would consider my masterpiece. Bought this house, tore the roof off, built a second story. Pulled out all the stops. Guys, check this thing out. Looks kind of like a drug dealer's house. And, built custom stairs, welded them, and did a great kitchen. And, I thought I had it figured out. Bigger, add more square footage. But the thing is, this house became my prison. I got too big of a head. And as I mentioned, I kept getting bigger and bigger, swinging for the fences. And, on this particular project, there was a garage in the downstairs. And I was going to leave it a garage when I bought the house. So I got money to just renovate it as is. I was going to do the pop top, but I decided midstream that, because of what houses were selling for, or what I thought they were selling for, per square foot, that adding that garage as square footage would be great. So I converted the garage into square footage and then built a 3-car garage in the back. Had to bring all the concrete to it. Expanded my costs significantly. And, well, I didn't have the money to do that. We're talking about 6 figures of adding on. And to add to that problem, I miscalculated the range of comps and what I thought it would be worth by a pretty good margin. So doing this project, I knew that when I finally finished it, I would be losing money to the tune of over 6 figures. Every day I went to that job by myself because I couldn't afford any contractors. And I thought about what an idiot I was, how I was going to do things differently. And eventually that transformed not into how I was going to do things differently, but how I should just quit after this and stop flipping altogether. And to add to it, this guy comes and buys the house across the street. And I see him over there, and he's like in khaki shorts and sandals, and he's like happy as can be. He's doing the work himself. And also he was growing a bunch of weed in the backyard trying to sell it to me. There he is. Not actually, but you get the idea. Now, did this guy tear the roof off and build a second story? Did he do a crazy exterior finish, gut the whole thing? No. Look, I don't even think he painted the outside. I think he bought it like that. And then here's his kitchen. Looks like something straight out of an HGTV show. And sure, it's nice, but that's nothing special. We've all seen that before. Here's the bedroom. It's actually got carpet in it. And I don't even think he replaced the carpet. I think he cleaned the carpet that was there. There's one of those trains. Geez, what are you going to do, But the carpet, same carpet that I think he bought the house with. And, well, anyway, this guy, old Willie, he bought that house for, check it out, $423,000. And after just a few months of smoking weed in the backyard, he sold it for $600,000 while I'm across the street in my own prison thinking about all the money that I'm going to lose. And I built a way prettier house than this guy built. And that's when I learned about a disease. I learned that I had a disease that I call new builderitis. New builderitis is when you lack the creativity to do anything else besides rip it all out and start fresh. You lack the creativity to say, man, look at the kitchen that's there. What could I build around that? What could I reuse in here and save money and save product? And a lot of people suffer from this problem. And this, I believe, is the thing that causes most flippers to lose their butts. And to help drive this home, I want you to imagine that you just tied one on last night. You got a headache, you're hungry, you're tired, and all you really want is, the most calories you can get for your dollar. You want the 10-pound omelet that is rolling in grease. And you got $20 in your pocket, which is perfect. You go to this truck stop diner, and the waitress comes over, hands you the menu. And what's on the menu is this petite, dainty little $50 gourmet meal. Ugh. But you only came with $20. You can't afford this $50 thing. You went to a truck stop diner. You didn't want the nice thing. And so there's only really two options at this point. Well, you leave, or you go talk to the chef and you say, hey, sorry, man, I came here for $20 10-pound omelets and some black coffee, so I can give you $20 for your gourmet treat there. And, well, going back to my prison house, it's exactly what happened to me. I thought that I was in a neighborhood that would accept a gourmet meal, an $795,000 little meal. But instead, guys, well, I was in the truck stop diner, and I could only sell that thing for $667,500. That sucked. It was in Denver, so it wasn't a truck stop place. There's not a bad neighborhood in that town. Now, am I talking about cutting corners? Because that's the first thing that people think is that, well, man, this guy's just going to cut corners, hide things inside the wall, and sell it to people that don't know anything. And, well, that's not what I'm here for. No. See, cutting corners is when you agree to do a certain scope of work, and then you make the decision that you're not going to do that scope of work, and you're going to hide the fact that you didn't. That's what cutting corners is. And one other thing that cutting corners is when you leave behind safety and liability. But our rules for a scope of work, well, it starts with safety and liability. We're not going to let the windows be painted shut or have non-egress windows where a kid could get locked in a bedroom and couldn't get out. We're not going to have broken glass. We're not going to leave out fire alarms. We're going to make sure that the railings meet code so people can't fall through them, that they're tall enough, that we meet the code requirements for the work that we do. There's no live electrical inside the wall. That's what shady people do, and that's not what we're here for. And two is bleeding. See, houses bleed just like people. They have open wounds, and they have issues that allow water to intrude the property and make the property worse every day. We're going to fix those things, guys. And I've actually made a whole masterclass on how to deal with those items if you're interested. And don't get worked up about it right now. At the end of this webinar, we're going to send out a link of all the links that we discuss here. So it'll come to you. And three is what we call the baseline. The baseline, we're going back to the range of comps now, is that we're going to look at what all the houses in the neighborhood are selling for. And we're going to see what finishes they have. Do they have subway tile backsplashes, or do they have something cheaper? Do they have something more expensive? Do they have shaker cabinets, or do they have painted, used up cabinets? Or do they have something more high end? Butcher block countertops, or is it granite tops? Is it LVP floors, or is it hardwood? That's what we're trying to determine. What is getting sold in that neighborhood? And what we're going to do is we're going to take the cheapest one of each one of those things. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to hit the bottom of the range of comps. That's right. Because, guys, we're investors. And sure, I used to make beautiful houses, but I never made any money doing that. In fact, I lost my butt doing that. At some point, I decided that I'm in this to make a living doing it. That doesn't mean screwing people over, but that means that we have to be strategic. And the biggest return on investment that you get on any project is moving it from the far left, the bombed out, to the bottom, the baseline of the range of comps. That's where you get maybe a 3-to-1 ROI. It's not perfect math. But here's the thing is moving that property from the baseline of the range of comps all the way to the top or even further, well, you get maybe a 1-to-1 return on investment. That means that every $1,000 you spend, you can sell the house for about $1,000 more. So see, at the bottom of the range of comps, let's say it's $350,000 is what they're selling for, and at the top, it's $380,000. Well, it's going to cost you about $30,000, the difference between $380,000 and $350,000 to get to the top of that range. Well, no, because every dollar that you spend is a dollar of risk. Every dollar increases your risk, and we're about mitigating our risk. However, there is a way to push that property, its value, from the baseline to the top without spending 1-to-1 ROI money. And to help you understand this, I want to show you a picture of this nice young man. Now look at this guy. Got a tuxedo on, looking good. He's got the long hair. This is like the type of guy that if you saw him at Walmart at the self-checkout line, you'd be like, that's the kind of guy that doesn't steal from the self-checkout line, right? Might even let him date your daughter. I wouldn't, but some of you might. And let's take that same guy, but he's getting ready for band night because this guy was the former drummer for a band called Slipknot. What if you saw that guy in the Walmart self-checkout? Sure as heck wouldn't be meeting him in a dark alley, right? Because the first impression that you have of somebody or something colors the way you perceive the rest of that person or that thing. And that is where we develop the idea that we call the big three. This is the final step of a scope of work. And what we're going to do is we're going to understand how people are going to approach our property. That means how they're going to drive through the neighborhood, where they're going to park and walk up to that property. And then we're going to know how they walk through the property. That is including the walking up to the property. Are they going to go in the front door, the side door, the back door? And we're going to funnel them to the place that we picked. Let's just say that they're going in the front door. And we need to get in their mindset. We open the front door. What way are they going to look? What way are they going to walk? Is the first thing they see the kitchen? I hope. Is are they going to see a bathroom? And we're going to take the first three things that they see, and we're going to go over the baseline. In fact, we're going to go to the top of the range of comps. We're going to pick what finishes really pop in that neighborhood. And just on those big three items, we're going to overspend a little bit. I know, I said it. I'm cheap, but I'll overspend on those things. Usually, we're going to try to get them to go in the front door, and we're going to give it some curb appeal. We're going to do maybe some shutters. We're going to do some landscaping. We're going to make it look real nice when you're walking in. We're going to start to create that filter. And then they open up the front door, and hopefully they see a kitchen, and we're going to overspend on that. And now let's talk about bathrooms, because people feel like they need to always do the bathrooms to the nines. Well, I will if I see it right when I walk in the front door. I'll put the nicest tile that's selling in that neighborhood in that bathroom if it's right at the front door or whatever door I'm walking in. But if it's in the back half of the house, getting a tub surround from Lowe's or Home Depot or whatever the baseline of that neighborhood is. You get the point. The big three, this is what makes all the difference. You see, you guys as flippers are what we call value add investors. And there's an equation. The value add equation. It's pretty simple. Your acquisition price plus appreciation equals your value, your after repair value. And well, what separates real estate from other investments? Let's talk about the types of appreciation there are. There's forced appreciation, market appreciation, and psychological appreciation. Psychological appreciation is what we were just talking about, the way that we create a filter, a first impression that changes the view that you have of the rest of the property and actually increases the perceived value, therefore the real value of that property. Market appreciation, well, that's the economy. You have no control over this. You can try to figure out how the economy works when the markets go up and down, and you can try to play that. And then forced appreciation. This is when you renovate a property, for instance. You force appreciation into that property with your own bare hands. This is different than all the other types of investments. Other investments don't have forced appreciation and psychological appreciation available to them. It's only market appreciation. I mean, could you imagine giving Jeff Bezos a call and letting him know that, hey man, I got a lot invested in the Amazon stock and I really need Q3 to turn out for me. And so hoping you can make a few changes. I got a list for you. Right. Yeah. Not going to happen. That leads me to the second of 5 reasons that real estate is the superior asset to invest in. And that is control, especially for you contractors. Like I said, with your own 2 hands or your own project management skills and knowledge, you can force appreciation into that property. You can control its value. You can't do that with any other investment. And there's another type of real estate investor that I call a spreadsheet warrior. Now, these are the guys that should actually be concerned. You see, because they can't just go to the job site and make a change. They are maybe smarter than me, and they know how to work out all of the numbers to where they work out perfectly on paper. And they know they have heat maps, risk maps on, if this goes wrong and this goes wrong and this goes wrong. But guys, you've been out there on job sites. You know that as soon as that thing starts, you get kicked in the face with the truth. And that is that it is never like you planned. And these guys have nowhere to go. I've seen these guys get devastated by surprises on jobs to where they just couldn't come up with the money. But the thing is, as devastated as I've seen them, it's not catastrophic. See, real risk is like this. This is a tulip. And you see in the 1600s in the Netherlands, tulips were an exotic flower and people hadn't really seen them much. And so it became like a symbol of wealth, almost like gold. And people started trading these for higher and higher amounts. In fact, they were worth 300 to 500 florins. Florins were the currency at the time at that place. And just to put that in perspective for you, a regular tradesman made about 150 florins per year. So let's just say that means $60,000. Let's say an average tradesman makes $60,000. So some quick math there says that those tulip bulbs were trading for $120,000 to $200,000. Oh, geez. And some actually sold for way more, up to 6,000 florins for certain kinds of tulips. That equals $2.4 million using the same math that we just used. And I found this story about this guy named Willem Peters. He had 3 kids and a wife, and he was a carpenter, and he was tired of taking orders from everybody else, tired of barely making ends meet. Maybe it sounds familiar. And he decided that he was going to make something of himself. He was going to take his family to the next level. So instead of doing these jobs for florins, the currency, he would do them for tulips. And in fact, he would sell the tools that he wasn't using for more tulips. And eventually the tools he was using and the materials that he needed for projects and everything that he could get his hands on, he would sell for tulips. But eventually somebody who probably wasn't that smart figured out that, hey, these are effing flowers. And just like that, the market for tulips went to zero. And what was Willem left with? Well, probably some tears, and a super expensive garden. Which leads me to the third reason that real estate is the most powerful thing to invest in. When a market crashes, when the economy gets hurt, well, at the end of the day, people need a place to live. And I can't see any future where that's not a thing, unless tent camping gets really popular in a big way. So the third reason is that real estate is universal. It's the biggest thing that everybody needs, and they're always going to need it. And that always attracted me to real estate. It seems so safe. It's tangible because it's real estate. It's real estate. I mean, real estate is real. It's always going to have a value. And not only that, but real estate and construction and renovation construction. See, they're not making any new land. Unless you're in Dubai. I think they're trying to make new land out there. But here, there's not going to be any new land. In most of the land around major cities and towns have been taken by houses. And those houses either need a renovation today or they just got one and they'll need another one in 10 years. It's never ending. And I think a lot about things like AI and robots and if they're going to be able to take my job, because there are professions out there that have literally been flipped upside down, that they spent their lives investing in their skills. And because of ChatGPT or one of the other AIs, it was all ripped out from underneath them, just like that. And I don't think that's possible with renovations. But new building? Well, this is Hadrian X. Hadrian X here is building a house. And I'm sure it'll get better. Because, well, new building on a known piece of land is systematic. It's done the same way every time. But renovations, rehabs, it's different every time. And for AI or robots to know how to do something, well, they need a book of knowledge. And I don't know who's writing that thing. And so I've just always been confident that the work that I put in, the blood, sweat, tears, the years, the money that I put into learning and building real estate and my skills in construction is just a rug that can't be ripped out from under me. And that's being universal. And to understand the fourth reason that real estate is so powerful, well, we're going to talk about the wheel. Yeah, guys, the wheel. One of the first tools ever invented by man. I don't know why I said by man. We're really the only ones inventing tools. I'm going to take you back to a place that maybe you've never heard of called Mesopotamia. And there was a civilization, the Sumerians. And, well, this was 3,500, maybe 3,000 BC. And these were one of the civilizations accredited with building the wheel. And the fascinating thing about this is that when archaeologists were digging up the ruins, they found these clay tablets. These clay tablets were legal contracts, is what they were found to be, for buying, selling, and leasing land. So guys, not only do I believe that real estate, renovations, rehabs, and flipping houses is going to be around forever, it's already been around forever. It's got a proven track record. And when I'm spending my time on something, I want to know that if I take these steps, if I follow this blueprint, that I'm going to have success. And it might not be sexy. It might be a boring thing, but it works. And it's worked for literally thousands of years. And if you don't like that, well, you could try crypto. So as I mentioned, there's five factors that make real estate the best investment. And we've gone through the first four. That's leverage. You can use other people's money. 2 is control. You with your own hands can force the appreciation. 3 is it's universal. It's the biggest thing that everybody's going to need. And there's no world that I can see that it won't be that way. And 4 is history. It's been around for literally thousands of years. So what's the 5th and final reason that real estate is so great? And for you to understand that, I want to tell you about when I moved to the South and started buying houses here. And a guy showed me his house that was boarded up. And, well, I went inside to find a very large human feces right in the middle of the living room. And to add to it, there were mattresses everywhere, a whole lot of syringes, and some special adult toys found all over the place. But other than that, other than a little bit of cleanup, this property was in great condition. I was able to pick that property up for $21,000. And you see the Zestimate here. It's worth almost $250,000 today, if the Zestimate's right. But I think that house, the day I bought it and had it cleaned out, was worth 5 times, maybe more, what I had bought it for. It didn't require much of a renovation. And that is the most powerful thing about real estate, is the discounts that you can get. And when I say discounts, you know, I've heard recently the stock market has dipped a little bit. And so I hear a lot of stock investors saying, oh, time to pick up a discount. Well, I'm not talking about picking up a discount because the market dipped a little bit. I'm talking about when you know what the value is, and instead of buying there, you buy here or here or here. That's a discount. And you're not going to find those types of discounts on Zillow. You're not going to find them on the MLS, the market where real estate agents list all their properties. You're going to have to go direct to the seller. You're going to have to market to get in front of these people, and you're going to have to show them the value of selling that house to you. Now, there are a few factors to deal with. I'm going to wait till that train stops going crazy for just a second. I think we're good. I said it was quick. So there are really 3 factors that you're looking for when you're trying to assess a deal. Number 1 is the ARV, the range of comps, what that house is worth after you've renovated it. And I did a whole hour-long masterclass on how to find comps. And to summarize quickly, like I said, we'll have a link of all the links at the end of this webinar that you can find there. It'll be in the description if you're watching this later. But to summarize, you want to average out what the comparable properties are selling for. And there's really 3 things that we're going to look for. 1 is the features. Is it the same house as mine? Is it a similar house? Is it built in a similar year? Does it have a similar look? Is it a similar size? Does it have the same amount of bedrooms, bathrooms? Is it in the same condition? 2 is the date sold. You don't want to look at houses that sold 3 years ago. You want to look at houses that sold less than a year ago, maybe even less than 6 months ago in a hot market. And 3, and most importantly, is proximity, the neighborhood. You see, a lot of people think that zip code means neighborhood, and that couldn't be further from the truth. In fact, there are lots of neighborhoods inside of every zip code, and they could vary vastly on their price, on their value. And so there are a few ways that we determine the neighborhood. 1 is simply intuition. Driving or walking through the neighborhood, you can feel when it's changing from one neighborhood to another. And in a pinch, you can use Google Street View to figure this out if you have a lot of experience, but I'm not about out-of-state investing. 2 is that you'll look for major cross sections. Major roads or railroads are usually indications that a neighborhood is ending. It's a boundary for a neighborhood. And the third and most powerful thing about finding neighborhoods is something that took me a long time to figure out. And this is census tract data, which there is the census tract website. And I mean, it works almost every time. But the combination of those three items, the intuition, the major boundaries, and the census tract, gets you in the neighborhood every time. Almost every time. I guess there's always exceptions. All right. Number 2 is the rehab. You guys know this. You know how to write a construction bid. If you don't, look at some of our other content. And 3 is the sales process. Now, a lot of people get freaked out here, but I'm going to show you guys soon that you're already doing this. It's just some minor tweaks. You got to understand how necessary the sales process is, because what a seller thinks is this: ARV, $300,000, renovation, $50,000, and that means they think that you should pay $250,000 for the house. Well, that couldn't be further from the truth, right? Because there are other costs associated with that deal, with that project. There's insurance costs, there's real estate commissions, there's lender fees, there's property taxes that you have to pay. And we have a calculator for all that. I'm going to show you that. And but the most important thing that they leave out, and the most important thing that you need to understand, is that really what you need a discount for is that you are going to take the risk that they were not willing to take. Remember I said earlier that every dollar you spend is a dollar of risk, and you need to account for that. That risk is your profit, and that's what you get paid for. You're an entrepreneur. You are facing the darkness, and you're willing to see how it plays out, and that's what you get paid for. And you need to figure that in, and you need to be able to express that to a potential seller. And that's why, guys, you need to know how to sell. But the problem is that when you say the S word, sell, this is what most of you see. You think about used car salesmen that are grimy, stealing people. And it's unfortunate that those type of people exist, and they have given sales a bad name. But what sales really is problem solving. It's understanding the problems and crafting a deal that makes sense for both parties. A strong offer. And once again, guys, I have a formula for this. The offer strength equation: authority times value proposition equals offer strength. What is authority? Authority is rapport, trust, and expertise. Rapport is how much do they vibe with you? How much do they get along with you? Trust is how much do they believe that you will do what you say you're going to do? And expertise is how much they believe you actually have the ability to do what you say you're going to do. And all three of those things together make for strong authority. And remember the equation that if your authority is 0, anything multiplied by 0 equals 0. So without authority, you have no strength of offer. Now let's talk about the value proposition. What most people do, what most quote unquote salespeople do, is they are just blabbing about the features. They're trying to sell the drill. You know, it's RPMs or blah, 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 and, you know, it can do this, that, and the other thing. Nobody cares about that crap. Maybe you do, but what they care about is how it's a benefit to them. You want to sell the whole. You want to sell what the drill gives them, not the drill itself, not the features. You want to sell the benefits. But to really understand what would be beneficial to that person, you need to understand them. You need to get to know them. You need their walls to come down so that you can find the real problems that they're facing. And then you can craft a deal that solves those problems for them and also works for you. Or maybe you can't do that at all. And that's part of our process, is you're going to let them know. See, there's the sales process itself, and it's really broken down into 4 parts. And these are correlated with the percentage of time you'd spend on each one of those. You have the intro, the walkthrough, the negotiation, and the transition. The intro is where you would use what we call a pattern interrupt. They talk to salespeople all the time, the kind like we just showed you. And you want to make yourself be different. And you're already going to be different because you're a contractor and a true expert. I mean, there could be no better expert to a house than a contractor. You already have that going for you. But there's one more step that I would usually recommend taking, which is to tell them what you're doing. I'm about to walk through the house, estimate what it's going to cost me to fix it, and from that I can derive the price that I could pay from that property, and to really see if it's even something that works for us to buy. See what we did there? Most people aren't going to say they're not going to buy it, and you might actually not buy it. That's your pattern interrupt. That's quick. 5% of the total process is just the intro, and you're going to get right into the walkthrough. Because think about it, and this is how you need to act when you're walking in there. And it's not even an act, it's the truth. That you're somebody that's there to buy the house. You're not messing around. You want to know about the house. So go find out about the house. And now you're going to do an estimate, just like every estimate that you've ever done. You're going to figure out how much it's going to cost to do the renovation. And just like if you were talking to the Karen homeowner, you would be building rapport as you did that. You would be having conversation with them. You would be asking them what's actually driving them to do that project. What's actually driving them to sell their house. You would really get to know that part of them. You would stay focused on the property itself. You would point out the things that you'll have to fix. And you don't need to do it in the scary guy from HGTV. Well, I don't remember that show, the contractor guy who, every house was some kind of nightmare. You don't need to do that. They're expecting that. Remember, pattern interrupt. But talk about the things that are wrong with the house and what you'll have to do. And that's going to take up a heavy portion of the whole thing here. It's going to take up maybe 60% of the whole process. And then you have the negotiation. And the negotiation is where you're going to sit down and show them how you've come to the acquisition price. And you're going to show them the calculator. And you're going to plug in the numbers that you come up with your estimate. You're going to plug in the numbers that you're going to need for lending, what the real estate commissions would be. And this is already preloaded in the calculator. And it's going to spit out the number that you're willing to pay for that property. And you're going to remind them of all the reasons that they want to sell the house and how you, as a company and a person, fit those things perfectly and can handle all of those problems that they have. And this is the price to do it. And then the transition. You need to, for lack of better words, mark the territory. You need to give them concrete next steps so they know it's legit, and then carry those steps out immediately. So one of the things that we do is, as soon as we get a house under contract, we let them know that we're going to reach out to the title company. The title company will be reaching out to them to get the information that they need. We explain what a title company is. And then, like, literally as I'm walking out of that place, I'm calling the title company, hey, make sure you send an email to these people. And, then we get it all underway. So just a quick recap. The intro, does it work? Does it work for me? I don't know. I have to find out if I can buy that thing. The walkthrough, just doing an estimate, guys. Build rapport as you're doing it. Figure out what expense the renovation is going to be. The negotiation, we're just going to show them the calculator. Transition, concrete next steps. Here's a quick glimpse of the calculator. You can see I just put in the after repair value, which I will get them to agree with me on what the after repair value is. What do you think this house would be worth? This is like during the walkthrough process, right before I move into the negotiation. Is, hey, I see this house on Zillow is worth $300,000. Do you think that seems like what it would be worth? And then the rehab cost, I go through it with them. This is, I'm going to have to do this, that, and the other thing. We're going to, do all this work, and this is what I suspect it's going to cost me. Rate of return, that's your risk. And I straight up tell them, I want to make about 15% on the money that I have invested in this property. Holding time, points on loan, other cost of the sale, that includes real estate commissions. And this is all preloaded when you go into the calculator. You can adjust those numbers, but I like things to be real quick for me. And it's going to tell you how much profit you'll have. That part I don't usually show to the person because it's not their business. Okay, so that's how I make a deal when I'm there. How do I find the deal in the first place? Well, we have a simple marketing process, and I'm not going to go too in depth here. Basically, we set up a home base, which means that we're going to have a website. We're going to have a phone number that is separate from your personal phone number. And that's it. We're going to make sure that they know that we're a real person. The website can be super simple. We set them up all the time, and we can show you how to do that. The next thing is we're going to send mail out. They're going to get mail. Usually we put a picture of ourselves or some idea that it's our brand, and that way they'll go to our home base, see that we're legit, unlike the out-of-town people who have P.O. boxes. And then we're going to follow up with those people. And the follow-up is basically the same as the sales process, except for the negotiation instead of the price is a negotiation to let you come see the property. So the walkthrough looks more like, hey, I'm just trying to figure out the condition of the property. Is the roof, does the floors need the blah, 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 blah. And, it always ends in, I really want to see the property. And that's as legit as can be. I want to see the property. You know how it is when you're bidding a project that, they just don't know what you know when you go to look at that property. Now, one more thing I want to say before we move off of the deal and the marketing and the sales is that you are going to be going up against wholesalers and other real estate investors, these out-of-towners. And, I know that you might feel uncomfortable with the sales process at the beginning. Almost everybody does. I went through the same thing until I realized that, man, there are some scumbags out there and they are just out to screw these people over. And I feel like I have a duty to the society that we live in, a duty to the community that we're in. Society is a little too large. Community that we live in, to being local, that I need to make sure that I get that deal and not somebody else. Because I know that I'm going to close. I know that I'm going to do what I said I was going to do. And listen, if they're talking to you, they're also talking to them. And so you have to beat those guys because it's either you or they're going to end up selling to them. Now let's talk about selling that house. Now, there was a time where I did for sale by owner, and I don't suggest this at all, not only because of the work, but because, well, you put a special filter on that property. So you really want a real estate agent, but as I mentioned earlier, not your cousin Becky. You want to find a real estate agent that works with investors, and they're easy to find. Just ask around. We're not going to spend too much time on that. I just don't want you to use just anybody that's got a real estate license. And we definitely don't want to do for sale by owner because a filter gets put on that property and it's the worst filter ever. It's a filter that says, I'm cheap and so is this house. Give me lowball offers. Beat me up. I've definitely overpriced it because most for sale by owners do. Now, I used to think that the market is what the market is and there's nothing that I can really do to get more money. It's all in the renovation and the strategy and all that stuff. But I found out that that's not the case. You see, I do think that you can put a filter on that property that makes it worth more money, similar to the big three, but even less work altogether. And, we're not talking about changing that property structurally. We're not talking about doing more renovation. We're simply talking about putting a little bit of makeup on it, and that can make all of the difference. And that's why we apply our makeup, which we call the digital filter. And this is where we make sure that we have it priced right, because if you go too high, you're going to sit on the market, and any house that sits on the market too long gets a kiss of death. A filter that says this house has things wrong with it. And we don't want to go too low, but low is always better than high. 2 is the photos. We're not putting photos from our iPhone for that house. We're going to get professional photos done. And I just hire it out. 3 is the copywriting. And this is the step that most real estate agents and house flippers fail to do. They think that they can just put "Welcome to 123 Main Street." Ugh. Copywriting makes all the difference. There was a website that is, I'll link it. I think it's called Unique Products. And anyway, they bought all of this junk from yard sales. And they took each one of those pieces and had a story writer write a narrative about that item, and then went and sold it on eBay. And the numbers were like hundreds of % more that they sold them for. Like, I think they made $6,000. I got to get the real numbers. We'll link to the story. But the point is that copywriting, presenting the property or presenting an item appropriately, makes all the difference. Remember, you want to sell the hole, not the drill. Now, there's the work. I'm not going to touch on this at all, guys. You know what to do. If you do want to know more about the systems that we use, you probably have your own methodology. But if you want to know more about our systems, if you go to our website, we actually did some free courses, 2 courses, one on what we call the jobs menu, and 2 is the La Rosa systems. It's a 6-phase system. It's how we manage all of our projects. But the one thing that I want to say about the work is that you guys are eventually going to be managing your own kind, other contractors, and just remember what you hated about getting hired by these guys. Remember that these guys are trying to make it. I know that there's some dirty contractors out there, and I talk about them often, but most of them are good guys that are trying to make a living. It's just a really tough business. And so make sure that you don't do the same to them. That was last couple things that I want to say before we close out is that I challenge you to spend the next 120 days busting your butts to find a deal. It's 120 days that could change the trajectory of your career. If you find a deal and then use some of the things that you learned here today to get some lending and are able to get started on that, I think that it will have an enormous impact on you. And truly, just focus for 120 days on getting a great deal. And if you get it and you can't find the funding, reach out to us. Our email is going to be in the description. Reach out to me and we'll make sure that you find the funding. This is not an affiliation with us. We just know the people who give that lending. And I just want to leave you guys with one quick story about an entrepreneur just like us. He was hungry and he wanted to make something better for himself. And he was actually in the restaurant business of all things. And he finally found a restaurant that had a product that people loved, and it had business systems that were scalable. And he was hungry and he was a pretty good marketer. So he was actually able to scale this restaurant across multiple states and ultimately the whole US. But there was a huge problem. You may be familiar with this. The margins were just razor thin. Even though he had expanded this business across the country, he was not making any money. In fact, he was on the brink of financial destruction. It was about to be the end of his house, the end of his marriage. And finally, he had a revelation. He thought that, well, the business already has to pay rent to a landowner. Why don't I own the land? So he decided that the next restaurant that he opened, he was first going to buy the land. And he continued to do this for years. And now that company is one of the largest landowners in the world with tens of billions of dollars of real estate holdings. And this restaurant was more like a burger joint. And this guy was Ray Kroc, and the company is called McDonald's. And guys, you already know how to flip the burgers, and now it's time to go own the land. Thank you.